Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're decoding SAP Employee Central. Now, you might hear that and think, oh great, another piece of HR software. But I want you to think of it a little differently. Picture it like the master blueprint for a company's entire digital headquarters. All right, let's get into it.
So this is the million-dollar question for pretty much any big company today, right? You've got people all over the world, different roles, complex reporting structures. It can be a total nightmare to manage. How on earth do you build one single reliable system that knows everything about everyone from their first day to their last? This challenge is exactly what Employee Central was built to solve.
So let's stick with that digital HQ idea. Employee Central isn't just, a database. It's the actual architecture. It's the framework that takes a company's most valuable asset, its people, and organizes them into something that actually makes sense.
And believe me, the scope here is huge. We are literally talking about the entire employee journey, from the second someone gets hired, through every promotion, every transfer, all the way to the day they retire. It's all captured in one spot. This, right here, is how you finally nail down that single source of truth everyone's always talking about.
Okay, so any good headquarters needs a plan, right? You don't just show up and start throwing bricks around. Well, in the world of Employee Central, those master plans, they're called data models. They're the core blueprints that map out how every single piece of information is going to be structured. The data model is without a doubt the foundation of everything. It tells the system what kind of info we can even store, like an employee's name or job title, and just as importantly, how all that info connects. You get this part right, the whole building stands strong. You get it wrong, well, you get the picture. And for our purposes, there are really two main blueprints you gotta know about. First up is the corporate data model. Think of this as the actual architectural plan for the building. It lays out the company's structure, the legal entities, business units, divisions. Then you've got the succession data model, and that's the blueprint for all the people living inside that structure, all their personal and job info. So, simple, right? One plan for the building, one for the people.
All right, so we've got our blueprints. Now it's time to actually build this thing. And to build our digital HQ, we're going to need some materials. And Employee Central, our core building materials, are called foundation objects.
So what are foundation objects? Think of them like the standard prefab parts of your company. They're the stuff you use again and again across the entire organization. Like standard-sized bricks or beams or windows you'd use to build an actual house.
I mean, think about it, right? Job codes, departments, office locations, these things aren't unique to just one person. They're standard building blocks that get reused to define jobs and who reports to whom for thousands of employees. These are the absolute bedrock of the company's structure.
But of course, a pile of bricks is just a pile of bricks, if you can't connect them. That's where associations come into play. These are like the mortar, the glue, the bolts that hold our entire digital HQ together. They define how all these blocks relate to each other. For example, you might say one location can only be in one geozone. That's a one-to-one relationship.
And this is how you build out a company hierarchy. It's a classic one-to-many relationship. So check this out. You've got one legal entity at the very top, but under that one entity, you can have many different business units. And under each of those, you can have many different divisions. See how that works? You get this super clear, logical structure, and it's all built using these simple association rules. Okay, so we've got our blueprints, we've got our building blocks, but a modern HQ, it needs to be smart. It needs a brain, right? Well, in Employee Central, that brain, the intelligence that makes everything automated and slick, comes from what we call business rules.
And the logic behind these rules? It's actually beautifully simple. It's just if, then. Basically, these rules are always watching the data for specific triggers. So if a certain condition is met, let's say an employee's country changes, then the system automatically does something else, like triggering the right approval workflow. And the best part? No one has to lift a finger. It's all automatic.
And this automation, it gets even smarter. So you've got something called event reason derivation, which is a fancy way of saying the system figures out why a change happened. Like, if an employee's job title and pay grade both go up, the system is smart enough to know, hey, that's a promotion. Then, workflow derivation kicks in and figures out who needs to sign off on that promotion. The system gets the what, the why, and the who, all by itself.
So we've covered the blueprints, the building blocks, and the brains of the operation. So, how does this all actually get put together? Well, the whole setup process follows a really logical order. And once it's built, all these different parts need a way to talk to each other. And the implementation, it pretty much follows the exact logic we've been talking about. First, you lay the foundation. You define those blueprints, the data models. Then you bring in the materials, creating the foundation objects. After that, you install the brains, configuring all the business rules. And only when that entire structure is built and ready to go do you finally move the people in by importing all their data.
But how does this one central system share its information with everything else? The magic word here is HRIS Sync. I want you to think of it as the master data pipeline for the whole company. It takes that beautiful, clean, reliable data from Employee Central and just pushes it out, syncing it across the entire SAP SuccessFactors suite. And that's what makes sure every other part of the system, recruiting, compensation, you name it, is working off the exact same playbook, that single source of truth. Okay, so after all of that, all this complex back-end stuff, the models, the objects, the rules, what's the point? What does the regular employee or manager actually see? Well, it all comes together in one single, really user-friendly spot.
It's called the People Profile. This is the front door. This is where employees and managers actually go to see and interact with all this data. It takes all that messy, complex stuff we just talked about and serves it up on a clean, simple, intuitive platter. This is it. The finished, furnished, totally functional digital HQ that everybody gets to use every day.
And of course, this interface isn't stuck in the past. It evolves. The older version, the legacy profile, it used these things called blocks to group information. But the latest version, the newest People Profile, it's been updated to use these really slick, interactive cards. It's just a perfect example of how the system keeps getting better, keeps getting more modern and easier to use.
So, at the end of the day, building a digital HQ with a tool like Employee Central, it's about so much more than just software. It's really about creating clarity, making things more efficient, and embedding intelligence into your company's DNA. Which brings us all the way back to that first big question. When you finally have one reliable single source of truth for all your people data, what does that unlock? What new possibilities does that open up for strategy, for automation, and just for your employees' day-to-day experience? That, right there, is the real power. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.